So there was a second thing in 2 days where an extraordinary event of unbelievable circumstances strain into the miraculous happened at a Detroit Tigers game. The second one being yesterday, June 11. The one before that was June 10. The one before you can watch on my channel. But here's this one. Here, take a look for yourself.
Pitched by Casey Mize to get out of that inning.
If the Tigers score 3 or more runs, you get free curly fries tomorrow. Valid only at participating Arby's. Free small order of curly fries comes your way if the Tigers score 3 or more. This popped up foul. Back of home by Winsell Perez, and it reaches the first row right around Cal Ripken Jr. and John Harbaugh. How about that? We show them while we're doing the Arby's promo, and then they get peppered.
Getting out of the way, too.
Hey, they got
nothing to do with that.
That is awesome.
At least like, hello, Mr. Ripken.
That is so cool.
Mr. Harbaugh.
What amazing timing. See, they react just like we do. Pants on, one leg at a time. Foul ball, let you catch it. That's great. Swinging.
So, again, second one in 2 days. Now, I know people are going to want to say coincidence, but when do we see these things happening where we don't say coincidence anymore? These bizarre events have been discussed pretty heavily by sports commentators. I don't watch that much sports, just a little bit here and there, and it seems like anytime I turn it on, I see this going on, this discussion of wild events happening. This is another circumstance of one. I mean, what are the chances that the moment they've got the camera on John Harbaugh, that the ball basically hits him from a huge pop-up? So, of all the places that the ball can go in the park and all the moments that a ball can go somewhere in the park, it's at that exact tiny duration of time they start talking about that the ball hits there. I just take that as not coincidental. Now, I know that the atheist is going to come along and say, well, of course it's coincidental. I'm feeling pretty comfortable going with the thesis that it's these events are too unlikely. These events piling up like this every day. A couple times, maybe you could say, oh, wow, what a coincidence. Which is supposed to kind of mean like it's extremely mystifying. But we're going to say, oh, it's just chance. It's just kind of how the dice fell. I think what people mean by chance really is an event that looks like there's a supernatural intervention of something beyond the cosmos, which is responsible for creating everything and being in control of everything. But we're not going to say that. We're just going to say, oh, wow, it's crazy, and ignore any other further philosophizing about it. I think that's what chance really means, at least the way people are using it. More simply put, it's just a way to say we've seen an act of God, but we're going to deny God did any hit thing or had anything to do with it. Sounds like the end times to me. 2 Thessalonians 2. I think we're so used to just brushing these off that we don't even notice. But really bizarre things are happening all the time. We have wild stuff going on in the jail. Somebody asks for a book, and then 2 hours later we unpack it in a donation, really rare book you've never gotten, and somebody asks for the same book, just stuff like that we're seeing. And I think people can literally go through their day-to-day life with these events happening, and they'll literally just not really notice what's going on, that something kind of amazing is happening every day. And here we're seeing it play out in a Detroit Tigers game. But going back to the specific incidents at the Tigers game yesterday, the odds are, if you work these out in your mind, all the times that somebody's in a stadium and fans are showed, and that at that moment they're getting hit with a ball. I mean, when's this ever happened before? I used to watch a lot of baseball as a kid. Nothing ever like this happened. Nothing even remotely close. So you might say, oh, there's so many games, it's going to happen sometime. You just happen to be seeing the one. That's an interesting point. Couple it with that the day before, a just as unlikely event happened. Or maybe even more unlikely the day before. And then there's all these other series events. When do we get to the point where we say that all that's actually going on is God is simply showing signs that he's in control, that the reality is more than the sum of the parts, and the more is God. And through all kinds of moments in our days, he's making himself known. But we've been taught all kinds of evil concepts, like the concept of coincidence and the concept of chance and the concept of, oh, wow, that's weird. And then we just dismiss it all and move on with our lives because we've all been conditioned to think that there's no supernatural activity. There's nothing greater than our very, very limited scope of perception that we humans have. I'm not just talking about our five senses. I'm talking about any ways we perceive anything with scientific instruments or whatever. I mean, our scope is so unfathomably limited, and our philosophies are so incredibly tiny. And where we, live in a despiritualized culture, people aren't aware of signs from God because they don't have any faith. If they did have faith, then their eyes would be open, but that's not happening. So they are conditioned to believe that there's no God. So in other words, from not being aware of God in their moment-to-moment life, they conclude, therefore, God doesn't exist. So that's a critical thinking fallacy, that basic structure of thought there. And things like this, and there's a whole lot of other stuff you could show too. I'll try to put more videos up on this kind of phenomenon. Destroys all that kind of thinking. These are simply signs that there's something else in control. And it's showing itself all kinds of times throughout your daily life. I think people just don't really believe it, though. I think that people only believe really what the herd, to put it in Nietzsche's way, that what the mob thinks, the herd, the conformist culture, the group think. When things stray out of that, people tend to not think it's real. Only what other people, the mass group of people, think is real. The devil knows this, and that's why he has such an easy time getting big groups of people to think all kinds of things uniformly, think often crazy, absurd, ridiculous things. Like, let's go send your kids off to war for bogus reasons that we can't even verify. I mean, wow, that really shows the level of brainwashing that can go on. So anyways, I don't usually talk political anymore in my life, so I don't mean to stray into the political there. But anyway, this is just extraordinary stuff. This should really be looked as great news, that these signs from God are popping up through things. These are just kind of the same things that happen in our daily lives. But we humans have been taught to ignore them and think that they are not what we directly see them to be. Things that are beyond the domain of reason.